I just want to give you a little bit more information about one of the programs that we participate in at the Weaselhead called Calgary Connect. So just very quickly, what we're going to be doing is talking about some of the Calgary Connect results, what Calgary Connect is, and some of the things we found over 5 years of monitoring. Very briefly, what scotobiology is and why dark skies matter, and our dark sky sanctuary designation that we're working on with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. A very big thank you to the partners and funders of Calgary Connect. The Mistaki Institute runs the whole program. Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society, along with Friends of Fish Creek Preservation Society, Alberta Parks, and the City of Calgary are all partners on this program. And we are very generously funded by the Calgary Foundation and the TD Friends of the Environment. And a big thank you to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, who is working with us on that nocturnal sanctuary designation. So what is Calgary Connect? Eve kind of told you a little bit here, but Calgary Connect is a long-term wildlife monitoring project that began in the city of Calgary in 2017. And so we use remote cameras in our natural areas to look at medium to large size mammals. And the program started in May of 2017, and I've been with them since September of 2017. So I've seen a lot. The goals of Calgary Connect, basically, why did this start? So this is also revolving around the ring road, which is a very important part of the Weaselhead and the advocacy that we have participated in. And essentially, when the ring road was being planned, the province said that there was no wildlife in the city of Calgary, so we didn't need to think about wildlife in the design of the ring road. The city of Calgary very rightly said, "Are you kidding me? We've got wildlife in the city and we're going to prove it." So they worked with the Mistaki Institute to set up this project. And over the lifetime of this project, we have had over 100 cameras set up in different parts of the city and different parks. And we want to understand not only what wildlife is here, but also how do they navigate through the city? So what are they doing? Are they using these natural corridors? Are they venturing out of the corridors? And again, how are they navigating in and out of the city? Because wildlife does not stop at the border of the city. And in fact, it comes from outside many times. So through 5 years of monitoring, so far we've done monitoring analysis for 2017 through 2022. And you might be thinking it is currently 2025. Where's all that data? It's in progress. As you can imagine, with a lot of images through these cameras, we have a lot of analysis to do. It takes a really long time to classify all these images and then proceed with the analysis. So there is now ongoing analysis beginning on the 2024 data. And we have not even begun to classify 2025 yet. So we got some work ahead of us. But what have we learned in that first 5 years? Well, we have learned that there is a lot of wildlife in Calgary parks, contrary to what anybody else might say. There's also a lot of people in Calgary parks, and a lot of them use the parks with their animals. So domestic dogs, horses, cats, and even one guy with a pig. My personal favorite. We've also found that wildlife shift their activity to avoid interacting with humans. There's different ways that species navigate the urban environment, so not everybody uses it the same way. And the connections leading in and out of the city are important for wildlife management, movement, and coexistence. So again, who's in Calgary parks? You can see that big yellow chunk there. Almost 80% was humans and domestic animals. So those domestic animals, again, included dogs, cats, horses, cows, domestic goats, and again, that pig. He was in Fish Creek, in case you're wondering, and it was hilarious. 15%, almost 15%, are ungulates. So that's our hoofed animals. So our moose, our white-tailed deer, our mule deer, and a couple of elk in there as well. And then 5%, just over 5%, are our carnivores. This is not an exhaustive slate of the animals we found because, interestingly, they don't all fit on one graphic. So there's more. In the Weaselhead, you will, of course, notice there's a lot of beaver activity. So that's one of our animals that we have caught mostly in the Weaselhead, but also in Fish Creek Park as well. And porcupines. This is a little porcupine. Both of these were caught in the Weaselhead. And more as well. There's even more that didn't make this cut even. So some of the big results that we found is, again, that wildlife is varying their use of the urban landscape. And we've classified these species in 3 different ways. So we have avoiders. Oh, I don't know where my pictures went on that. We have avoiders who will stick to the edges of the city. So they will come into the city, but they are not venturing into built up areas. They're coming in and they're leaving. We have the utilizers who are more adapted to the urban environment, and they will come into our neighborhoods, but they're really sticking closely to those natural areas. So they're coming in, so you might think of like a bobcat that you might be used to seeing in your neighborhood, but they have a very strong association to green spaces. So that's what we would call a utilizer. And then we have those dwellers. Those are the ones that are using our urban landscape for all of the things. So they're breeding in our landscape, they're feeding in our landscape. Yes, bobcats do fall into that too, so they're in a bit of a gray area. But think of skunks, think of squirrels. These are our urban dwellers. So they're the ones that can fully live with us. They're still going to be visiting those natural areas, but not to the same extent that the avoiders and the utilizers depend on them. And there was a really cool graphic. I don't know where it went. The other thing we've noticed is that wildlife is affected by people. This is probably not really a surprise to any of you here, but we are noticing that they change how and when they use the landscape. So we can see based on their patterns of whether they're avoiders, utilizers, or dwellers is also going to influence how they use the landscape when humans are present. And remember, these are all in natural areas. So this is exclusively in our parks. So we notice that there's several different ways that they separate themselves from people. So they will spatially separate. So they will literally avoid an area where people are. And this can be seen with moose, who we found will visit an area. And then if a human comes in, it could be up to 10 days before they will come back to that area. So if you look at the moose and then another moose coming on a camera, it can be in close succession. You add a human in there, and suddenly they're out. They're not coming back for a while. Then you can see temporal separation, and you can see this on two different scales. You can see this in daily, so they might be shifting then their temporal activity from the daytime to the nighttime to avoid people, or again, over days and weeks. And this is all dependent on individuals. Some individuals are more willing to be around us, but definitely also species specific. And so here we've got three. We've got the red fox. These would be classified as an urban avoider. I know in some places they're very prevalent in the urban landscape, but not in Calgary. They don't want to be around people. Bobcats, on the other hand, they're a little more willing, but they're still not really that comfortable around people, particularly in our natural areas. If you find a bobcat in a natural area, you can count yourself lucky. You're actually far more likely to see them in our urban areas. And then the coyote, they're pretty ubiquitous everywhere. So they're going to be pretty good. They're actually a dweller. So again, here we can see that same pattern. So you can see the dotted line is human activity, and then the straight solid line is our wildlife. And you can see a pretty clear pattern there. When humans are active, wildlife are not. Particularly if you look at the bobcat and the red fox. It's pretty crazy with that red fox. They're active, they're active, they're active. People start coming in, they're out. They want nothing to do with us. The coyotes are a little bit more willing, and there's this area of overlap here, which is a little bit larger, but still they are altering their activity according to human activity in our parks. So what does that mean for wildlife? Because these natural areas are their lifeline. They need these areas to survive in the urban habitat. So in order to survive, they're going to be shifting themselves. Often that means they're going to be there when there's less people around. And generally speaking, there's less people in our parks at night. And the nighttime is their time to shine. And yes, I did mean to do that. My little funny joke. So when we think about studying how wildlife navigate in the urban landscape, we can be brought to scotobiology. Scotobiology is actually looking at the study of biological systems that are affected by darkness, or alternatively, systems that require a period of darkness to properly function. So we can look at animals that need that period of darkness. We can think of things like hares. They are changing color in response to photoperiod. So they need that light-dark cycle in order to trigger that change in their coat. Or we can think of things like flying squirrels that we can see here, which are purely nocturnal. So they need the dark sky in order to properly survive. And then we can shift that to some of these species who might be considered to be active during the day. So at nighttime, we are seeing these species come out. Elk. It's not unusual to see an elk in Banff during the day, but you are only going to see them in our parks at night. Black bears, same thing. It's not unusual to see them during the day, and in fact, they're considered more diurnal comparatively to other carnivore species, but in the parks, we're seeing them at night. Moose, they're kind of iffy. They could be You might not see them terribly often, but a lot of people do see them during the day. In our parks, they're avoiding human interaction and shifting their activity to the night. The cougar is probably not that surprising to you, that it would be active at night comparatively to the day, but they actually are active all throughout the day. Maybe it's surprising that I'm showing you an image of one crossing underneath the Weaselhead Bridge, maybe not. And same with that red fox, just as we saw in that last temporal slide there. So red foxes, this is also a red fox crossing under the Weaselhead under Stony Trail. And so that's going to be my next little point here for you. So those corridors in and out of the city. So this is where we're currently monitoring. So you can see Fish Creek Provincial Park at the bottom there, the Weaselhead into Griffith Woods corridor, and then up Pascaine down through Beaumont into Calgary there. And so these are the three main entrances we're currently monitoring. And we have cameras up at the bridge underneath Stony in both Fish Creek and in the Weaselhead. We do not have anything up in the northwest part because there's actually not any designated corridors for wildlife up in that area. Underneath the road, I should say. But we are noticing that this is incredibly important for wildlife movement. So since the road has been opened in 2021, we're starting to see increased movement of wildlife underneath Weaselhead. And a lot of that is increasing again as the fencing goes up. So as the fencing is going up to funnel wildlife under here, they are using it. So it is effective in mitigating that. And it should be mentioned that it is thanks to the Weaselhead that underpass even exists to support wildlife movement. It was through the advocacy of the society that they widened the corridor so that it is big enough to support movement of things like moose and bears and cougars. Again, you might be a little concerned by the cougars. I promise you, they're around. You don't know it. Don't worry about it. So what now? So starting in 2025, it kind of entered a new phase, and Eve touched on this a little bit. Calgary Connect became part of a bigger project looking at landscape connectivity beyond the borders of the city of Calgary, and it's part of Nature's Network. So monitoring the Weaselhead and Glenmore Parks is going to continue at least for 3 more years with generous funding from the Calgary Foundation, and results from Calgary Connect are going to continue to support the Society's work. What work, you may be wondering? Well, some of it's going to be our coexistence work, so the work that we educate children about every time they're coming into the park. But the big one that we're going to focus on in the upcoming months here is our nocturnal sanctuary designation. And this is with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, who's generously supporting us with their time and knowledge to help us get this designation. And unlike other sanctuaries, not sanctuaries, preserves that you might see, dark sky reserves, this is not for astronomical purposes because unfortunately we are in an urban environment. We can't really get it dark enough to be top level for astronomy, but we can preserve the ecology of the park. And so this is to a special new designation that will protect the ecology and biodiversity of the nocturnal environment, supporting nocturnal wild animals and plants. This is going to require us to comply with Royal Astronomical Society lighting protocols to minimize the impact of artificial lighting on the natural environment. And part of that is public outreach. So this is public outreach right here. And also we do have education that we're working on with surrounding communities. We are in discussions with Lakeview and Oak Ridge, and we're going to be working with Sutina as well to support different lighting decisions. So responsible lighting that supports not only our health, but also the health of the wild environment that surrounds us. And so this is something that we're working on. It's been ongoing. And as mentioned, we're working with the City of Calgary because ultimately they're the ones that get to sign it. We're just doing some of that preliminary background work on there. And if you do want more information, and there is lots more information to get, rockies.ca is the Mistaki Institute website, and there is all kinds of results, and there is the full analysis from those 5 years. If you have time on your hands and would like to go through a bunch of data, please do. Lots of fun stuff in there. And also we've got lots of stuff on our Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society website. If you want more information about dark sky sites, the RASC, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada's website, is also a good one.